Nice to know. And here we go. It's reading rainbow, reading rainbow. I think I'm gonna make me a theme song. Divine day, divine rise. Blessed be to your day. May be everything you require to create everything that you desire. I don't know why I didn't do that. Hello there, everybody. Hello. As I finish getting myself situated. Welcome to Papa Lucy Sunday service. Yay. We ain't done this in a minute. I wanted to come in. So beautiful. Yes. I wanted to get into a couple of aspects today. As we're forever growing, forever changing, forever embracing a lot of things. Understanding that, yes, the healing is destructive. You are deserving, but you're not entitled. And this level of honesty is going to force you to sit in the transparent moments and move past the points where you always feel exposed for your weakness and step into the vulnerability, understanding that your weakness is a strength. Understanding that everything is happening for you and not to you. And it's setting you up for something better. But I wanted to get into the aspects of what that mouth do. If you saw the post I made earlier in the Saturday, I think I did it on Friday or Saturday. What that mouth do? Are you three things in that aspect? As you're learning yourself, as we're learning ourselves, as we're working with ourselves, working within ourselves, are you practicing the practical procedures of the reality of the timeline you're trying to be on? Are you practicing the practical solutions of the reality? Are you practice? Oh shit, go away. Are you practicing? It does. It's beautiful. Just had the line cut and all that good stuff. Are you practicing the solutions of the reality and the timeline you're trying to get into? Or are you stuck within that infinite loop? That means your energy is still stifled. That means your energy is still stagnant. That means you don't know how to move your energy. Sometimes we're looking at the space with ourselves, you're realizing that you do not know how to move your energy. You're noticing that you only knew how to move your energy one way. You're noticing that you were used to only moving your energy based on impulse. So by the time you get done with that impulse of you're wanting to feel good for a day, you're wanting to feel good for a couple of months, a couple of weeks, whatever, after that shit dissipates, everything that you did inside of that point, everything that you did during the rise of that energy inside of that space, based on the limitation, me staying in a constant limitation with myself of something as simple as accepting what you are in that space, accepting the full range and the full perspective of what, in an example for me, talking about the aspects of the divine masculine archetype and what that actually is and what it is, the divine feminine archetype and what that actually is. Instead of being stuck in this space with yourself of, I am woman, hear me roar. I am man, hear me roar. And not really understanding that, or when you're speaking from that tone, when you're moving from that tone, when you're in that space, are you really there? Are you really there? You gotta ask yourself the question. Are you really there? Are you really there? Are you constantly practicing? And one of the things that I've come to learn with the aspect of the practice is the feminine aspect of energy in the simplest form. Remember, the solution is always practical, is the aspect of attentiveness. The feminine aspect is the attentiveness. The masculine energy is the assertiveness. Based on what I pay attention to is where I'm going to assert myself. How am I asserting myself rather than the old program based on your trauma, based on what you've been through, based on all the cycles you've been through. A lot of times we're trying to insert ourselves because of that lack mentality. You're trying to constantly insert something. You're looking for something to penetrate, or you're looking for something to penetrate that space so you can keep doing what you've been doing. You're looking for something to penetrate a certain space, but when you get into that space, you're not really of that energy. You're not of that space. Use something simple. I run, do my workouts, do my meditations in the morning, self-reflections, my health routine when it comes to me conditioning my beard, I make sure cutting my hair, all of these things. All of these aspects are of me. I want you to understand this. I'm having a whole deja vu moment. All of these aspects are of me. I had to get to a point with myself where I wasn't doing it for something. I want you really to understand this. I had to get to a point with myself where I wasn't doing what I'm doing for something, because that automatically would leave me in a state of servitude. That means that energy only could be every time that energy came down, the download, and whether it was a download, the thought, whatever came in, every time it came in, I wanted to use it in that space. I wanted to insert it in that space. I was not giving myself the time to actually be attentive to the feeling, be attentive to the emotion, being attentive to the emotion, being attentive to the feeling, being attentive to what my ego was bringing to the surface and bringing me like, hey, here's this. Being attentive to what my inner child is telling me to do or wanting me to do, being attentive in that space. I was not sitting in that feminine space with myself, that feminine aspect of my energy. All of my everything that I was doing because of that reality that reality of my old self based on servitude, most of the time, I was trying to always insert it into like, there's nothing wrong with me doing this, I'm a man. There's nothing wrong with me doing that, I'm a man. There's nothing wrong with me doing this, I'm this. But I have to accept everything that comes with it. See, when you're coming into this aspect of what you keep speaking, are you speaking through the hurt? Are you practicing, when I ask that question of, are you practicing the reality? Are you practicing the potentials of that reality that you're trying to go in? That means use an example. I always use myself as an example because I created the example of myself. When it comes to something as simple as me being fully engaged into being the healer, being the occult psychologist, being this figure, being this energy, being this entity that I am now in this purpose. Everything that I do is not going to be based on, I'm only a psychologist when I'm helping people, or I'm only a healer when I'm helping people, when I'm helping people directly, when they're paying me a certain way, when they're doing this a certain way. No, at all times I'm the psychoanalyst. At all times. Everything that I do inside of that space now becomes because it's of me. So use an example. Tomorrow, let's use an example. On Monday, I wake up 4 a.m. Wake up 4 a.m., full body scan, do my meditation, set my intent, look at the intentions I set from the night before, affirm those intentions, set my tone to learn, giving myself this full me time from about 4 to about 8 o'clock, about 4 to 8, 4 to 9, 4 to 10. If you go search, you can actually Google me now. If you Google me and you look at my business page on Google, it shows you my business hours. My business hours are between 11 and 6. You can book anything. You can book between 11 and 6. Just because it's at 6 don't mean I won't do a later one if we have a conversation about it. But those are my hours. Me setting those hours were based on the discipline of myself that no matter what I'm doing in between 11 and 6, I'm putting in some type of work. If I'm not working with the client, I'm creating posts that are geared towards healing and triggering. I'm creating content. And if I'm not creating content, I'm going to be studying something. So now inside of that space, when I first began doing that aspect to even get to understanding how to put the time together, I had to practice getting to that point. I had to practice getting to that point. I had to practice inside of that space. That means me waking up at 11 o'clock, me working up at 4 a.m., it started with me going to the gym. Me waking up at 4 o'clock, it started with me meditating, going to the gym, getting myself ready, things of that nature. Now inside of that space, natural to the space. Similar to like when you wanted to go first, your first workout, you first wanted to get into spiritual studies, whatever it was, you thought based on your old self. You thought based on your old self. You thought you needed a certain, you thought you needed a certain book. You thought you needed a certain book, a certain time, a certain stage. You thought you needed certain things, and you went and purchased those things in that space. You got a little bit of information from it. And whether it didn't work, or it did work, you got the result that was necessary. If you sat there in your first meditation and you felt like you didn't do shit, you got your answer. You got the necessary answer. The first time I meditated, I was like, I don't know what my first time I meditated was, the things that came up was all of the meditation videos I was looking at the time, clearing my mind and all of these things and all of that shit. That was my mindset in that space. The only reason that it was triggering me because I didn't practice yet. I wasn't used to that space. That space was unfamiliar. So of course I'm going to put things in front of me that are adversaries naturally. They're adversaries to my old way of thinking. But if I'm doing this from an unconscious space, that means I'm trying to look for something got to happen. Something got to give. I got to think about this. And as long as I'm inside of that thought process in my head, that's what my reality becomes. So now I'm practicing unconsciously my reality. You've been practicing your reality unconsciously for fucking years. You've been practicing the same reality for years. So don't think the first day that you start healing that all of that, you thinking that, oh my God, I've been doing this forever, now I want to stop. That shit want to keep playing. You got to remember, you put that shit in play. That shit want to keep playing. That energy, oh yeah, we got used to this. Your inner child still sitting, when I was talking about the inner child, your inner child ran so rampant trying to gain attention and got all these definitions of attention with themselves. You think that's going to stop off the first day? You think that's going to stop off the first week? You think that's going to stop off the first day, the first week, the first month, the first year? Nope. Nope, it's not. You think just because, okay, cool, I cut the cords with this person and I did this candle work and I did some candle magic and I did this. You think that that's going to stop that from happening? You got to remember, every time you put in this work, it brings you the result that is necessary. It's never going to bring you what you want. It's always going to bring you what is necessary. You're not used to the thing that triggers us a lot of times. We're not used to what is necessary. We don't know what necessary is. So we don't practice in what is necessary. We can get so caught up. We can get so caught up in what our ego needs, or what our ego needs based on the attention our ego needs, that we don't think like, wait, maybe my ego is telling me this. Now I read a post about intuition, my gut feeling, my intuition. So so now instead of me sitting with it and really understanding what intuition is, I define my ego as intuition. My ego takes the form of intuition. Your ego is an excellent fucking employee and a horrible fucking boss. It is an excellent employee and a horrible fucking boss. So if I'm going into a space and saying my gut feelings based on what? Now you got to ask yourself the question, based on what? My gut instinct is telling me that my man is cheating. My gut instinct is telling me that my girl is doing some dirt. My gut instinct is telling me my mom is trying to use me for all my money. My gut instinct is telling me this. That is your trauma. That is your trauma. That's your trauma speaking that, because it's an unresolved aspect. And as long as you stay in those unresolved aspects, you stay within that mentality of that infinite loop of that energy. You will not go any further above that. Human narrative. You ain't gonna get no better than your baby father. You ain't gonna get no better than the baby mother. You ain't gonna get nothing more. You're not gonna get anything more than what your mother is. You're not gonna get anything more than what your trauma has dictated. I don't care what you do, how you want to do it. You will not get anything more than what your trauma dictated. It is a deafening honesty. You're not going to get any more than that. This mindset a lot of times with ourselves when we sit inside of that space and we're like, yo, but I want my life to be a certain way. You're like, okay, cool. I want my life to be a certain way. I want my life to be a certain way. I want my life to be this way. I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to do this. In what way? Let's use the example. The moment that I say I want something, I'm sitting in my feminine energy. I want to attract. I want to be in alignment. I'm sitting in my feminine space. Whether you are the god or the goddess, whatever it is, you're sitting in the feminine space. Every time you set an intention, you're sitting in your feminine space. Every time that you're building, or you're asserting the new program and the new narrative, you're sitting in your masculine seat. Because of the wounded perception, a lot of us don't realize what seat we're sitting in. From the wounded perception, you're trying to be attentive through the masculine, or you're trying to be attentive based on what you're seeing. Your attention is based on what you're seeing. Your attentiveness is based on what you're seeing. Your input, your cycle, what you're doing is based on what you're seeing. It's not based on what you're feeling, because I don't feel anything. So the moment that you actually, the subtleties, remember I'm always talking about emotions are subtle as fuck. The emotional energy is subtle. The subtleties of the sign, the subtleties of the sign, the subtleties of you growing, it's subtle. The sign is always subtle. It's always something practical. But because your mindset or our mindset stays stuck within a certain paradigm of it has to be this way, and we've looked through everything being that way for so long, that's what we'll look for. You'll bypass everything else to look at what you're calling traditional. The traditional fundamental of if it looked like this, but I've never had that before. That's not my type. That's not my type. You don't look like this. It don't smell like this. It don't feel like this. It's different. But now you got to think about how you keep doing that. It's kind of like you going into a situation, be like, yo, you're different, but then you're treating it the same. It's because you have not become attentive in that space. It's because you have not become attentive in that space. You're not being attentive or nurturing anything of that space. Use the example, let's go back to the example I said earlier. When it comes to me and my work, when it comes to me putting in work and doing what I do, if I'm not studying, I'm applying something. If I'm not studying something, I'm applying from what I study within that space. Regardless of the time, the day, whatever, I'm applying to that space in that real time. It took those steps in those, I felt like I was losing. I felt like I was dying. I felt like I was not shit. I felt like I was worthless. In order for me to sit inside of that space, to be like, wait, this keeps happening. Everything that I'm doing, I keep attracting. Why do I keep attracting these certain things? Why am I because the main reason is because I was not ready for everything that came with that reality. I was not ready for everything that would come with that reality. I was in fear of that reality. The reason that you can stay in fear with certain realities or going into certain spaces with yourself is because you have not yet accepted the old reality for what it was. I wasn't accepting my old reality. I wasn't accepting my old spaces. I didn't accept it yet. I had this idea in my head. My mind made shit because of this, and this. And placing all of the blame on that, I had the idea in my mind. So naturally, I only can act from that idea. Not feeling it, not connected to my body, not connected to my body until I wasn't connected to my body until the afterthought. It's kind of like, think about it like this. If I know that if I know that my health is an issue, I can't run, my stamina's low, my energy's always low, all of these aspects. All of that's going to show up in my subtleties within my body. If I know that if I don't understand breath, like if I don't understand how to breathe, my breath work was horrible. If I go for a walk, or if I try to run somewhere, or I go play with my nieces and nephews, or I go run or whatever it is, and I'm out of breath, that's letting me know that I need to do breath work. The surface level thing is when we'll tell ourselves, our ego will be like, yo, you need to get in shape. So your ego looks for the surface level. You got to get in shape. So now, undisciplined thought, you're not in that practice, you're not in that reality, you're not used to seeing yourself that way. And when you see yourself that way, you're used to seeing yourself there based on validation. So now everything you do is going to be based on that validation. And this is how you get stuck on Amazon at 3 o'clock in the morning. This is how you get stuck on Amazon at 3 o'clock in the morning, looking up workout equipment, looking up books, looking up stuff to put on an altar, and then you looking at the prices, and all you saying to yourself, yo, I ain't got the money for that. I ain't got that. I ain't got it. I don't have it. I don't got the money for that. I ain't got it, so I can't do it. So I'm going to put this to the side. Think about how many times you've done that with yourself. Think about how many times you put some shit to the side because you said, I don't have this, that, and the third. What do those things represent? If I don't have this certain shit on my altar, then am I really doing the work? I don't know. Are you? You got I've talked about this before. You have a multitude of altars around you at all fucking periods of time. Your very house and the house that the crib where you're at, that was your altar. You made that your altar. You made that the outcome to being where you were at that point in time. So naturally, because you did it one time and it worked, you kept doing it over and you like, okay, cool. Yep. So now every time you filled this space up in reflection to your mind, you filled this entire space up with all these pretty things. And when it got too tight and it got too constricting, you were like, it's time to move. Because now you must think about it. That is your program for your reality. The way that you're used to moving through your reality is when shit gets too tight, I have to move. When shit gets too uncomfortable, I have to move. I gotta move when it gets uncomfortable. I gotta move. My feeling, the only time I notice my body, listen to my body, listen to the inner workings of my body, my human design, is only based through the shame. It's only based through the inadequacy. It's only based through the lower level of the emotion. Once again, you're not moving the energy. You're allowing the energy to move you. When you sit in that space, you're allowing the energy to move you. You're allowing your frustration to move you. You're allowing your inadequacies to move you. You're allowing those things to move you. You're allowing them to move and set up you looking at the outcome. This is what we mean. Like, I give an example. I cannot not meditate. I cannot. I'm at a point now where at 4 a.m., my body automatically gets up and I must sit with myself. My body literally will not move. If I do anything outside of what I've designed that space to do, my body will automatically shut the fuck down. I tried it. I was like, let me test this shit out. One day I woke up, I was like, I'm not going to meditate. I'm not going to meditate. Let me do this test. I'm not going to meditate when I first wake up. I got up. I felt this, the impulse of the energy was normal. I said, see, I don't need to meditate. I can just keep going. By 10:15, by 10 o'clock a.m., my ass took a nap. I don't know where the nap came from. I was like, nigga, I'm tired all of a sudden. At 10:15 a.m. that day, I found myself slumped on the couch. I was asleep for about an hour. I was gone from about 10:15 to about 12. Knocked the fuck out. I'm like, yo, why am I tired? Why was I tired? That shit never happens. Instead of me saying, oh my God, somebody's tapping into my energy, somebody's trying to use my energy, because even then I'm saying, like, remember, think about these things that you say. Somebody's using my energy, or somebody's fucking with my energy, or somebody's in my energetic field, or somebody's saying something about me. I gotta ask myself the question, okay, if somebody's using my energy, I would have known that. Gotta be honest with myself. I would have known if somebody tapped into my energy if I had woke up and did my body scan that morning. If I did my body scan like I normally do, then I would have noticed if there was any fractures inside of my auric field. I would have seen that if my auric field was weak in a certain space and needed a cleanse. I would have seen what I needed to do when I woke up and I said, okay, cool, after I work out, I'm gonna do a spiritual bath followed by a shower. I would know how to operate inside of that space. You see how easily we can be so used to because you're so used to a certain result that if you know you do something outside of your space, this is being disciplined with yourself. I know what I do inside of my space is only meant for me. It's not based on doing it for. I don't eat healthy. I don't eat plant-based and eat meat once a week, once a month for anybody else. I do that because that is of me. I have literally defined that within this entire body graph. Within the entire side of my body, I've defined that. I know what happens when I don't eat. I know what happens if I eat this instead of that. I know what happens, and it's not based on, oh my God, you eating dead meat. No, I'm higher. I'm going higher than that. I know that I know that most restaurants, I have the information. I know that every restaurant that I've ever worked at, most of the people back there were cooking based on resentment. They were cooking based on resentment. They had to get a bill paid. They're trying to get out of there to go drink. They try to go out of there to party. I was the only motherfucker in there cooking motherfucking food that was based on actual love. So I know in most restaurants, if I order DoorDash or I order some shit, I know it's going to be filled with resentment. I know what the energy is going to be inside of that space. One of the things that I actually told my mother this the other day. One thing about me is, like, every restaurant that I've ever worked at, I'll never eat at again. It has nothing to do with the people, none of that. It's just that I can't see myself partaking in a space that I've already I cannot see myself going into a space that I've already went through. It was programming my mindset. I can't go back. I cannot see myself developing or eating at a space that I've once already went through. I can't do it. It doesn't work. So now when I'm looking at myself in my narrative of myself, where else do I feed? My body forced me to, nigga, lay down, go to sleep. Because I'm changing that tone. I'm allowing myself to feel it. Now, sometimes you need that hit upside the head. Sometimes you need to go to that Chinese restaurant on the corner. Sometimes you need to go to the Chinese restaurant on the corner. You need to see them back there laughing and joking and talking shit over your food. And you need to put that shit in your system because you need to clean yourself out. So do not deny when your body tells you, when your ego brings up, yo, let's go eat some Chinese food. Let's go eat this. Do not deny what your body tells you that you actually want. Go get it. Because your ass needs it. So when we're coming into this space with ourselves, remember, you cannot change the perception of yourself in any space, shape, or form. Your perception is only the light. Your perception is only the light. It is the focused memory. It is the focusing of that memory, whether it's an undisciplined thought or a disciplined thought or whatever, it's the results of you staying within either the thought or the feeling. That's all the perception is. What you're working on is dealing and sitting with your perspective. See, you got it now. A lot from the unhealed space, your ego is sitting in your perception. Your ego is sitting there with Uno cards. Your ego is sitting there with your trauma like Uno cards, waiting to say skip me, reverse, pick up 4, draw 4, and it's ready to slap some shit down for you. Because you got stuck in the perception. That light aspect. So every time that you speak, you have to ask yourself a question. Am I speaking to entice or am I speaking to inform? Am I speaking to assert? Am I speaking based on asserting or am I speaking based on attentiveness? What am I paying attention to? What is my focus of my thought? Where am I at inside of this space with myself? Am I present inside of this space? Those are the questions that I ask that are on replay every single day. I've asked these questions to myself so many times that during my self-reflections, after my meditation, when I wake up, I have a self-reflection. It's usually an interview. I've went past the point of having to ask myself constant questions to now it's an interview. I'm literally interviewing myself. At night, when I do my self-reflection, it's now an interview. It's an interview process. I didn't sat here and you're using the information that you have within the space. Use an example. If you're familiar with 19 Keys, it's a show it's on YouTube, High Level Conversations. I don't know how many times I've sat in the visualization of sitting across the table with 19 Keys, asking me certain questions and me answering them based on a reality that I'm creating. I'm actively creating that reality. Now, I want you to understand how you've done this unconsciously. Everybody in your old circle, based on the trauma, based on what you've been through, based on the things that you've done, you're having an interview at all times. They're giving you certain information. They're following the emotional cues based on the emotional charge. That means if you're speaking to somebody from a place of lack and you're saying, I don't understand why niggas don't do this and he didn't do this and she didn't do that and they don't do this and they don't do that and I just want a divine masculine man in my life. You don't know what a divine masculine man is. You've had the example as well. You've had the examples of a divine masculine man in your life. You've had the examples of the divine masculine derivative in your life. You've had the examples of the divine feminine principle inside of your life. You've had it in your life at all times. One example for me, my uncle, that nigga was the divine masculine in his lower state from a wounded state. He was in his divine he was in his righteousness within his space where he was. He was in his righteousness within where he was in the space based on the energy that he was in. And he used it to the full. My uncle was out here, everything from keeping his hair care routine, getting his hair cut, keeping his waves spinning, keeping his when he grew his hair out and keeping his curls looking luxurious, his beard, the way that he dressed, everything in that narrative, my uncle was literally the archetype of Baron Samedi. Yes, his human narrative. Yes, his human narrative was, he could be abusive. He could be abusive. He could be very abusive. He can be very heavy-handed. He can be a lot of those things. But that did not deny that he was my example of the divine masculine inside of that space. Instead of me sitting there saying, I don't want to be like, I can never see myself doing that. I can never see myself being that way. I was looking at it through that human aspect. I was looking at it through the limitation. I was looking at it through limitation. So I can never imagine myself. I was so naturally looking through limitation. Every time you look at something, you project. Through limitation is going to be an automatic projection. So it's like going into a space with yourself of, if you say, like, let's say if I make a whole post about, yo, I'm tired of motherfuckers not wanting to do their healing work and doing this, this, and this, and this, this, and this. If I'm really doing the work, I don't have time to say that. If I'm really doing what is necessary, I don't have time to say that. I don't have time to do it. I don't have time to make a post talking about I'm trying to save my people, because I've already understood that I can't save anybody because there's nobody to save. I must establish the examples. All I can do is create examples. That first level of you creating those examples, you're going to do a lot of shit for some shit. Accept the process. Your first part of your process, you're going to do a lot of shit for people. You're going to do a lot of shit. I'm doing it for this. I'm doing it for my kids. I'm doing it for this. I'm doing it for that. I'm doing it for a better future. I'm doing it for this house. I'm doing it for this, this, and this. And you're going to put all that into that new environment. Remember, you've now become attentive and started asserting that inside of your environment. Now that's in your environment. Now you got to deal with that. Here's where it gets tricky. Here's when the augmentation comes in. There are things that literally you can take care of today. In the moment of today, when you first woke up and you said, hey, I'm not going to meditate today. That could have took you, because you got used to, if I meditate and it got to be intense, your idea of intensity is based on time, it's linear. You got to think about your definition of what you're saying, why you don't have time. So if I sit here and say I meditate for 15 minutes every morning. Every morning I'm up 15 minutes. That's all I need. That is intense meditation, because intensity is based on the repeating at the same time for the same amount of time and challenging my perception inside of that space. My intensity has nothing to do with longevity. I don't live inside of time. It's one thing for yourself. I'm a god. Okay. Gods don't live inside of time. I'm a goddess. Okay, cool. Goddesses don't live inside of time. Oh my God, I'm working with my ancestors. Ancestors don't live inside of time. None of the shit you're doing, every time you make this grand statement of yourself, none of that shit is linear. You keep trying to use you keep trying to use the linear logic to rationalize your being inside of a certain space. I kept using my linear logic. 1 + 1 = 2. 2 × 2 = 4. And since I could do it, I was like, see, yeah, I'm right. You can't tell me 2 × 2 don't equal 4. You can't tell me 1 + 1 don't equal 2. You're exclaiming your comfortability inside of that space. That's because you can be right. See, trying to be right or afraid to be wrong leaves you either or you're going to be in a state of complacency. But that person over there should have did this. If they were doing this and doing that and doing this and doing this and doing this, maybe they don't know. Are you doing it? Nah, I ain't got to do it. I'm past that. So why are you worried? If If I'm really doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I don't have time to look at something else that somebody else is doing and solicit what I'm actually doing is soliciting a cord or a tether so I can feed instead of that space. I'm literally soliciting my energy into that space. I'm literally energy dumping. I'm literally doing an emotional dump. I'm not venting. I'm emotionally dumping. If you look on my page and you go further down, I made some of the differences between emotional dumping and emotional venting. You have to understand that in the space of you speaking, what that mouth do, yeah, I had to stand on my own too and stand there and talk. I had to stand there and say what I didn't want anymore. Okay. Was it open-ended or was it was it limited or was it open-ended? This is when you ask yourself the question. Was what you said, was it based on a limitation? You limited yourself? You talked yourself into a corner? Let me give you this example. You only can talk from corner to corner. If I'm used to putting myself in corners, used to putting myself up against the wall, and my impulse is always to move my impulse is the strongest only when I'm in the corner. They got me on the corner, they got me against the ropes, they got me against the ropes, they got me in the corner, they got me up against the wall. That's the only way that I know how to move. Then everything that's gonna be feedback is gonna have me always inside of a corner. It's always going to put me it's always going to show me the corner that I'm in. That's all it's doing is mirroring that back to me. That I've talked myself into a corner. Every time that I speak, the practice that I'm doing is not the aspect of dealing with the problem because it's not practical because it's not in the now. The solution is in your now. The solution will always have you in your presence. So use an example. You want to start your company. You want to start your company. First thing you got to ask yourself is why you want to start your company. I want to start my company because I'm tired of working for people. Your company will never, that will always be your cap. That will always be your cap. You acknowledge your cap as soon as you said it. The reason that I'm healing is so that I can find a man. I can find a woman. That's always going to be your cap. That's always going to be your distraction. Every single fucking time. I'm doing all of this work so I can get to this point. That's always going to be your cap. You just set your limitation. You spoke that shit out into the future. You spoke that outcome out there. So everything that's going to come to you is based on that outcome. Now you sitting there mad when that shit now you're sitting there upset that the moment that, okay, yay. So now this is how you get distracted because you naturally set your distractions. I'm doing this. I'm doing this because I'm tired of the way men look at me, the way women look at me, the way the white man look at me, the way my mom looks at me, the way my father, the way people look at me. Those will always be your distractions. Because what you're telling your inner child is we need them. You're still telling your inner child that we need them. You're still expressing all you're doing is expressing that your codependency. So now that you're stuck in that codependency narrative, you built a narrative around codependency, i.e. independent woman, real nigga, bad bitch, real nigga, hard nigga, street nigga, live nigga, I'm about that life nigga, I'm this nigga all day. You're the loudest nigga in the room. You made yourself inside that space, you the loudest nigga in that room. That's all that you created yourself as opposed to you actually being the silent nigga. See, that silent version of yourself that you were when you were in school, you were silent, you were to yourself. That was the truest version of you. That was the unbothered version of you. I had to understand that quiet version of myself, that was the truest version of myself. But I was integrated at a young age because of the trauma that not speaking up for myself was going to be a weakness. So naturally, I developed a tone that was loud. I developed a tone that was abrasive. I developed a tone that was abrasive, that was loud, that was insecure, that barks all the damn time. I had to be the first person to say it. I had to be the first person to do it. Every time I got the information, I'm like, yeah, I got the information. So I would hoard information. I would hoard information. I would hoard shit. And as I stayed within that space, I'm looking at my space and I'm trying to define this. I'm not hoarding anything. All my space, because I'm trying to define it within the complex. So me, I got OCD like a motherfucker. Got OCD like a motherfucker. Everything has its place in that space. I had OCD. My OCD was off the fucking chain. So being in this state of being an OCD, if I could organize it, I was telling myself that I needed it. If I had a place for it, I could put it in that place. And as long as it stayed within that space, everything was okay. If it got moved out of that space, now I'm angry. Why the fuck did you move that? Why'd you put that here? Why'd you do this, that, third? This, that, and the third. And I got stuck in that program. I got stuck programming all of my spaces to be like that. So now my definition of being in the divine masculine sense, I never got to the higher levels of divine masculinity. Because this is another thing how we get messed up. You can get stuck in consciousness, spirituality. You get stuck in the lower aspects of it based on the emotional feeling of it making you feel good. So you never get to graduate to the higher states of consciousness or the higher states of spirituality or enlightenment, or you stop looking at it as being tears. Because there's tears in as long as you are operating down here, there will always be tears that you must develop in. There's always tears to develop in. If you look at everything down here, it's developed through the aspects of tears. Everything down here is based on monopolizing. The last thing that I studied the other day, I've been studying the other day, is like creating holding companies, creating the trust, holding companies, different LLCs, different companies and dynamics of that dynamic. Me sitting with that information, it let me understand. I was like, wait, this is similar to what I've already done. I have I've created I have invested in multiple holding companies, i.e. the way my mom feels, the way this person feels about me, this relationship. This is when I tell you the example of you can physically leave the relationship, but you're emotionally still there. Your emotions you have not defined of why you were there are still there. So that holding company still exists. It's kind of like you've had a bank account and that bitch went negative and you just said forget about it until they charged it off. Out of sight, out of mind. Hope they charged it off. And then when you're sitting in your body, you're ready to do something new. And now you're looking at your credit and you're like, fuck, my credit ain't shit. Because your credit became secondary. Your credit, your credibility, your confirmation, who you truly are became secondary. As long as your credit was good enough to go get that, to go, ooh, I can go get this crib over here for $750 a month, you were okay. Because everything around it, you were like, I have a holding company that I can use for that. I got an uncle over here that let me put some of my utilities in their name. I got my mom's over here. She'll let me put the car in her name. But I thought your mom should have loved you more. So think about what you just said unconsciously. Your attentiveness. Your attentiveness is still to that narrative that your mother should have did more. Your attentiveness became my uncle's, my family should have did more. So now as a child, you're in that state of hyper adolescence with yourself. That's what you're acting out. So now everybody around you owes you something. They owe you this. They owe you that. You need to do this and you need to do that. If you did this, then I can do this. If the four I'm stuck in the, I'm not doing this because of, or I'm doing this for. Why can't I just do that? If my mindset, as an example, is I want a better home. I want the house and I want the backyard. I want the house with the big backyard. I want the pool. I want all of these things. Where am I being attentive in those areas? With myself. That means whatever space that I'm in, that's going to be my lesson plan. In that space will be my lesson plan. Because in that space are the lessons that I need to learn in order to get to that space. Think about it like this. If you want to be a public speaker, if you want to be a speaker, when I was coming into the public forum of speaking, I had to be able to deal with, if I didn't deal with my mom my mother, family members not understanding me, people having their own opinions and their thoughts and their ideals, them feeling some type of way and all of those things, those going unchecked would show up in my earlier lives. Y'all, if you've been rocking me for the big ass long time, my earlier lives, I don't know how many people would interject and be like, would come up under my shit and be like, tag people under my post and be like, hey, you need a reading or this and that, or hey, or some random chick could come out of nowhere and be like, hey, big head, and try to get my attention and shit. Instead of me reacting to it, I responded to it by continuously doing what I was doing. Because for some of the time, I already did enough of the work to already be in that space. These are the results of the unresolved with myself, the feedback that I need based on me becoming a better speaker, based on me being able to pace my words. So I'm not speaking through fear. That means I'm going to speak through an angry ass tone. I'm speaking through anger. I'm speaking through pain. I'm emotionally dumping. Because when you sit there and you allow yourself to go through that process, the shit naturally will expand. Shit naturally expands. If you go back and you look on my YouTube channel and a lot of my earlier lives when I back in 2008, the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, all of my lives were basically in front of my job before I went to work. And my first live was 30 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. And then eventually they got up to about 30 minutes. Then they got up to about 45 minutes. Then they got up to then I broke that hour mark. When I broke the hour mark, I was like, I don't want to put an hour worth of content on Facebook. All right, cool. But I have to look at everything that's going on around as I do that. See, the key is to look at everything that's going on around as you're changing your narrative. Everything is changing to set the new tone for you not to get stuck inside of that space. Because I wasn't speaking based on, you can tell, use the example, if you listen to music all day and they talking about killing everybody, and you got to talk about every one of your songs, you talk about killing everybody, somebody getting knocked off, somebody getting shot, then eventually this motherfucker is now on the news getting shot, nigga done died, nigga didn't get caught for gun charges. That was the reality they spoke. That was the reality that they spoke. If every time I'm inside of my reality and all I look at is fucking Love and Hip Hop and Basketball Wives and Black Ink Crew and all these aspects, and I'm not looking at it from a higher perspective. I'm looking at it based on perception and not perspective. Because I can sit here and watch Black Ink Crew all day on a Monday night. And all I'm doing is psychologically, all I'm doing is training my occult psychoanalyst muscles. That's all I'm practicing. That's all I'm doing when I'm watching it. So someone be like, "Ugh, you watch that?" Be like, "Yeah." It's a very good show for me to psychoanalyze things. See, I'm not gonna look for what everybody else was doing. Like, oh my God, okay, Dr. Strange came out. And I can't wait till somebody breaks down Dr. Strange. Not saying I'm just, why? I'm gonna go look at some of these shows I'm gonna go look at, if I'm sitting there watching TV, I'm gonna watch this show and see, I'm gonna break this down for myself. It's in my current narrative. It's in my current space. I'm not looking for something that's out. I'm not looking for something to keep me in a state of reaction. I'm not looking for that. That means every time you now I can always be present. I'm always present. I'm always in the aspects of being available. I'm always in a state of awareness. I'm always being in a state of asserting. I'm always in my dad bod, my dad energy. The divine masculine at its highest form is fucking dad energy. It's the father energy. It's the father aspect. The divine feminine in its highest fucking frequency is the mother aspect, the great mother, the divine mother, the great father aspect. So everything that I do naturally is going to be the test of the aspects of creating solutions. Everything that I'm doing is based on creating solutions. Everything that I do is going to be based on a solution. If you send me a message in my messenger, whether if my client is going through one of their rants or one of my mentees is going through a whole thing with their space, I won't answer it for about 3 or 5. Like if it's something inside of that space, I know what the energy is. I don't answer it for about 2-3 hours, maybe 2-3 days. I'll wait. Because just coming into my energy field, just allowing somebody to come into my energy field, they're automatically, after they've said about what they needed to say, 9 times out of 10, they got to go back to the beginning. They're only going to go to the point of their comfort zone, and I know that I'm already outside of their comfort zone. So in order to start listening, oh my God, they're automatically, everything that I've already implemented in past conversations, lives, lectures, podcast episodes, any information that I've put out, that's what's going to start replaying in their mind. Now they're listening to that. I don't have to do anything because I've already created the space that is necessary for the level that they're at. I'm no longer inside of a position with myself where I feel the obsessive need to use an example. If you looked at me the beginning of last year, Monday through Thursday, I dropped a live every morning between the hours of 10 and 11. By 12 o'clock, by 1 o'clock, when I had my first reading or my first consultation or first session, that video was on my YouTube channel. That video is on my YouTube channel. It's a clip on my TikTok. It's a clip on my reel on Instagram. Now I can put reels on Facebook. That shit was already distributed and put out, cut, copied, edited, music, put to it. It's already out there. It was already out there. Boom, gone. I don't have to do that anymore. The reason that I was doing that was for me to learn how to create content. Was to learn how to create content. I knew that I was in the right position with it because instead of trying to validate myself based on likes, views, I'm not looking based on likes, views, clients coming in and things of that nature. I'm looking at it based on, am I actually creating a space that can become self-sufficient? Am I creating this LLC that becomes self-sufficient? If you go to my YouTube channel, can you learn? Yes. Will you learn? Yes. Will you be triggered? Yes. Will you hate me? Yes. Will you love me? Yes. Will you want to walk away? And can I accept that? Yes. Everything on that list was a yes. Even the no's that I gave to myself. Because in that same space, like, yo, so now I'm looking at it based on this. Now I got to go to the other end. Yo, you ain't getting that many views on your videos. No. That's not, the same way with your yes is the same way with, the same energy I put behind the yes is the same energy I put behind the no. No, they're not ready for that yet. When it's time they'll go to that, that's the place that they'll go to. So I'm balancing the energy. So now I'm not getting stuck inside of that space because now I'm allowing myself to feel it. I'm allowing myself to be present inside of that space as it is. I dropped that lecture. I dropped that information. That information's for that space. That information is only my information is based on a generalized aspect. And if someone's inside of that space listening to that, that's where they're at. That's why they went to that. That's why they're in that now. That's what that's there for. If they're ready to go to the next level or ready to come to the next space, they'll have to accept certain aspects of themselves to get to that next space. I've literally changed the dynamic of how I'm available. This is what I've talked about before. And I've created the old boundaries are those aspects. Speaking in living, I've created living boundaries. Living boundaries as they start to set and they settle. The intentions of those boundaries, the hell was that? The intentions of those boundaries are to become rooted in my overall entity. So I constantly can receive the charge from that space. It's kind of like this. When you wake the fuck up, if you woke up for the half of your damn life, you've been waking up your whole half of your damn life, and you sitting there and every day you go through a relationship, you put all of that shit on Facebook. And now Facebook memories pop up. Peace. Facebook memories pop up and it shows you a memory from 4 years ago. It shows you a memory from 5 years ago. It shows you a memory from 10 years ago. It shows you a memory from 11 years ago. You think shit's, because you're in the mindset of things are happening to you and not for you, you'll look there and you'll feel ashamed at that post. Think about it this way. Let's break it down. 7 years into the future, 7 years into your past. Seven ahead, 7 back. 7 ahead, 7 back. Let's look at it in the timeline. I am just now getting to a point where my posts that show up in my memories, they're just now getting past the Jesus narrative. I'm going to share one of my memories today. I'm sharing the memory today. One of my memories is now at the 10-year mark of where I was in the public field of sharing my findings and my understandings of my own consciousness and my spirituality. It just now got to that. In front of me, now I'm no longer attracting that. I want you to really understand that. Now I'm no longer attracting that. Now what's in my current space is based on alignment to where I'm at in the present state of myself. Now I can go back and look at an old memory that I posted. Love sick, loving so hard, undisciplined love, needing attention, needy as fuck, angry as hell, frustrated as fuck. I can look at that and be like, damn, yes, I was that. And I can say, damn, I know what my distractions are. I know what my distraction is. I know what I need. I know what I am whenever I don't get a certain amount of attention. I know what that is. Damn, I've done that. I can own it. Everything is literally working for you. But if you're working for your ego, and your ego works for the program, it's similar to your job. It's similar to the job that you work. Your manager had control over you, But there was a big ass company over them. And you got everything that you wanted based in, as long as you did everything that the manager said, and the manager did everything that the boss said, and everything was good. But when you're stepping into your zone of yourself, you got to realize that you haven't been doing any work. You got to realize that, yo, I haven't been doing any work. I've just been skipping along and getting by. I've been in that, and this is when we get into the aspects of that Section 8 mentality. You ever notice when you look at income-based housing, welfare, government assistance, and programs of that nature, child support, things of that nature. Even if you're not getting it, I don't get child support. I got to work hard as hell. I got to be independent and do my shit myself. Guess what you are? That is the feedback of the mentality that you're in. I'm never going to depend on them niggas. I'm never going to depend on the government for my assistance to help me with anything. I'm never going to depend on anybody else. That is the feedback to your shit. The same independent woman clause, the same independent real nigga clause that you got in play, the same one that they got in play over there in that Section 8 mentality. That infinite lock of a loop. You stuck in that infinite loop with yourself. You can't go anywhere above that because you created your own ceilings and caps. You created a whole ceiling based on self-worth. You created a whole ceiling based on self-value. And the most that you get when you're sitting in that space and you're not going in doing the internal work, the most that you get is validation through invalidating. Or you get what we call the aspects of stimulation. See, that's why we ain't doing this. And that's why we ain't doing that. And that's why black people is where they at. And that's why black people are where they doing this, this, and this. Because they're not willing to do this, this, and this. Are you doing it? Are you actively doing it? Or are you passively doing it? I meditate every day. You can passively meditate. I'm actively doing self-reflection. You can passively do self-reflection. I'm actively working on my body every day. I'm working on myself every day. You can passively work on yourself every single day. You can passively do it all day. You can tell that you're passively doing it because you got to remind yourself. You got to convince yourself. You got to convince yourself, remind yourself. You got to do all of these things just to do one thing. All this other shit got to happen for you to do one thing. You're not actively doing it. I had to understand I was late. One thing for me, breaking out of the 9-to-5 mentality, I had to realize that I was lazy as shit. No ifs, ands, or buts. I was lazy as shit. I wasn't even procrastinating. I didn't even reach the level of procrastination yet. I was lazy as fuck. My definition of accomplishment was burnout. My definition of accomplishment and success was burnout. My definition of a successful relationship was burnout. Simply put. Because that helped me not really deal with my self-worth issues, my self-value, my worth, self-love, these aspects. It helped me not look at those aspects of myself. So when it came time for me to do something outside of my comfort zone, guess what the first level of your comfort zone is? Stepping out of your comfort zone is? Procrastination. Stepping outside of your comfort zone, you got to step into the world of procrastination. That's all of the unknown. That's all of the unknown aspects of yourself inside of a certain space at a certain point in time that you have not yet dealt with. All of those what ifs and maybes and shouldas and wouldas and couldas, those don't live inside of your comfort zone. Those are the first layers. Those are the first aspects outside of your comfort zone that are in the aspects of your procrastination, your purgatory, your limbo, your void, the door to your void, the door to your limbo. All of the emotional aspects are all of the emotional aspects are the existence of your comfort zone. Your frustration shows you the existence of your comfort zone. Frustration and inadequacy, the trauma, your reactions to the world, all of that is showing you where you're inside of your comfort zone. See, when you really start sitting with it, when I really had to start sitting with it, I was like, oh shit, that's why I keep doing what I'm doing, because I keep trying to do it the old way. That's what I'm mad how this rose is sitting on my face. I feel like the game right now. That's why I'm sitting in that space with myself, and I'm like, oh, I'm not used to self-motivation. I'm used to things being organized for me. I was used to things being organized for me. I was used to the things being given to me. I didn't accept that where I learned that from. Like, use an example. I had a fairly decent childhood. At a point in time, I had a fairly good childhood. What put my childhood together is the shit I didn't want to accept. When I was born, I was the only child for about 3 years. I was the only child for about a good 2.5 years. My brother didn't come down until 86. So I got everything that I wanted. I got everything that I wanted. Though it was warranted through limiting my emotional development, I didn't know that. All I knew is to be happy and smile on the camera whenever somebody said cheese. Say cheese, and I smiled with my standing next to my toys. That's all that I understood. That's all that I knew. That's all that I developed myself in. And then naturally inside of that same space, when everything else was happening, developed a whole nother set of codes. And then everything was organized for me. Everything was done for me. I want you to understand this. Everything inside of my space was done for me. I didn't have to wonder. I didn't have to worry. I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to overthink no shit. Everything was done for me. If I wanted to understand what being a man was, I had the examples. I had the best examples for that environment. If I wanted to understand peace, if I wanted to understand how dealing with the divine, dealing with women, I had the examples in my space that were based on where I was at, based on the environment based on my inception. That is what that is what created my behaviors, my patterns, and everything that I did. So, coming into your awareness with yourself, you look at everything backwards. You go back through it. So now I got to look at every conversation that I've ever had with myself first. I have to accept that the way that I spent money in this example, the way that I was spending money, how I spent money, what I invested my money in was based on, it was not based on, yo, I spent it, yeah, I did it, I was trying to be baller, fly. I had to accept the emotional reason of why I spent money that way, why I was running around, why I was doing the things. I had to accept the energetic motion that I was creating. That's what created what was magnetized to me. That's what created the charge. That's what created my space. That's why all that shit connected to me. That's why whenever you get the new information, it repels, and then it brings in another load of attraction. It flips everything around and brings it right back. So I had to get used to, wait, I control what comes in and what goes out. I only can control what goes out. If I do not like what's coming in, I must change what goes out. And I have to remember that 365 days, 52 weeks in a year, for up teen motherfucking years, that's what I did. That's the first line that I had to accept, of many lines that I had to accept. So this is not going to be, I can't look at it based on a linear amount. I can't see the I cannot see the multiple timelines because I'm stuck within the timeline. I'm stuck within the temporal loop. I'm stuck within it because I cannot accept, I don't know what time is. Time is emotion. Time is emotion that has been broken down and condensed and defined. Time, all time is, in the linear sense, is the point by point of my emotions and what I manifested. That's why when you look at somebody that you were in a relationship with, if I was in a relationship with somebody for 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, 2 months, 2 weeks, how many fucking years, that's how I define time. That's the only definition I've accepted based on time. So naturally, when I'm triggered, I'm gonna be sitting in that space like, I wasted so much time with this person. I could have done so many different things. No, you couldn't have. Be honest with yourself. No, you wouldn't have. No, you wouldn't have. Because in that timeline, let's get real into the humanity aspect. In that timeline, you had every example of something else to get you trapped into the timeline. On one end, you had a nigga that went shit. On the other end, you had a nigga that seemingly looked very good because they were giving you everything. The only reason this other person looked so good and so great is because of everything that you were lacking from this person was not giving you. But the honesty was you were lacking. The only reason that these two axioms or 2 points exist is because you're lacking. This one over here makes you feel bad. It makes you feel, you're saying it makes you feel bad. It makes you feel guilty. It makes you feel worthless. It makes you feel lost. And this person over here makes you feel like the greatest person on earth in all of these aspects. Truth and told, you're still lacking. You're still lacking. So your whole conversation of what's your mouth do is only based on servitude. Based on servitude and replacement. You don't have any structural or foundation built to that space. You don't have any. You haven't built anything of that space. You haven't created anything of that narrative. You haven't been able to sit with yourself and be like, you know what? Yeah, my life was, yeah. You haven't sat with yourself long enough. And the most important part to that is knowing every time that I said I needed help and I didn't want to ask. Every time that I said I need somebody to give me a certain, like, challenge my perspective, and you ask for it. But because you don't know what challenging your perspective looks like, you're used to it being loud, you're used to it being abrasive, you're used to it based on your environment. You're not used to anything actually being soft. You're not used to the gentle directness. How someone can come on and gently direct you and make you look at yourself and think about some different things. You're not used to it. It's okay. That's the learning process. When I ask you the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Pretty much any of us can give ourselves this thought process of, I see myself here doing this, with this, this, and that. And you'll see it through your eyes. You'll see yourself in that space through your eyes. But until you're able to envision yourself and look at yourself in that space and look at what you look like inside of that space, you'll never become a part of that reality. Because your mind is stuck on third person. Your mind is stuck on that first person. You're still in first person shooter mode. Your trauma has you stuck on first person shooter. By the time you get the third person shooter mode, it's your ego moving you around. It's your ego moving you around. It's your traumas moving you around. Because in every reality that you're in, that you see yourself in, the reason that you can't see yourself getting there is because your ego is playing third person. It has you in that third person scope. You have to get the first person. First person is the ultimate lens of accountability. First person is the ultimate observer mode. It's being able to look at your hands, do some miraculous shit, and you can see it, and you're not dependent upon something validating what you're seeing with your hands. You'll look for something to confirm it, like, oh yeah, I was doing that in that space. That's why the conversation changes. All my ancestors are inside of this bottle. So as you start changing that dynamic with yourself, everything outside of you that's now going to trigger you and piss you off and make you go on a tangent, sit with it. Instead of going off in the tangent, sit with it. There's a difference between you speaking from a space of honesty, a space of balance, a space with your energy, and it's not soapbox. You're not soapboxish. Because on that soapbox, when you be standing on that soapbox all the time, you got to step down. Remember, when you're putting yourself, when you're pedestal, you're not even pedestal. You're not putting yourself on the pedestal. You're actually it's posturizing. You're in a state of posturization. That means you're going through the motions of what that space will look like. You're not really practicing because you don't have any practical solutions. The practical solution, use an example. Let's use an example. The practical solution of me wanting the big ass backyard and the big ass backyard, and on Sundays I can do self-care and I can really be in a space that's of love and of that energy of myself. I had to accept that it led me back to a space where I was running. It's always going to take me. It took me back to a space where I was running from for so long. If I couldn't do it in that space, all I was going to do is look for the distractions to do it. I was going to heavily do it in other spaces. I got a big ass backyard. I don't cut this shit. I pay the motherfucker $50 every $50 to $65 every 2 weeks. They come out and cut the grass. I have what I need. Everything's in the space of what I need. Everything's inside of the space as exactly as I need it, exactly where I'm at. And accepting that, it changes my tones of the things I was speaking, the way that I was speaking, and exactly what I needed. Because I noticed when I was going backwards, when you go backwards, you only see repeats. You only see things that you react to. You only see things that make you angry. You only see things that are based on the emotional dump sites that you created. But when you go forward, you're being forced to sit in spaces that force you to actually vent, to release that energy. Safe spaces. For all of my clients, I create a safe space. That's my only job. That's my only thing to do in the space. Create the safe space. Your access to that safe space, is going to be based on the disciplines that I've created for myself, that I am of that space. I create a space of discipline. I create a space of safety. I create a space of vulnerability. So when you're going into that space and you start tearing up and you start crying and you start snot bubbles and you get angry for a little bit and then you calm down and I tell you to breathe and go through all the steps, it's because that's what I created that space for. I created that space for that. Going back to the beginning of what I said in the earlier part of this video, I've already done that groundwork. You got to do the groundwork. See, a lot of times we get stuck in, okay, well, we get stuck in, this is how we'll build it. Well, I already have this place, so I can use this place as that. That's not what that place was for. I've already done this and this and this, so all I got to do is change around some things in here and I can be okay. That's not what that space was there for. That space is for you to learn the lesson that is necessary. That's why you can't leave from that space. That lesson in that space, a lot of times, think about how many times you jumped ship, you ran away, you jumped ship, ran away, did all this other shit, and then now you are stuck in that space. Damn, I went from one space and now I'm stuck here. It's because your lesson is you need to sit the fuck down. That's what your lesson is. But you want to keep skipping over it. You want to keep following on the impulse. You want to keep falling under the same banners and narratives that you gave yourself because you like that tone. You like that monologue. That monologue validates your anger, but you're not angry. That monologue validates anger, frustration, your tiredness, your weakness. It just keeps validating that for yourself. Instead of you really sitting there being like, you know what? Yeah, I wasn't shit for many a years. I'm just as to blame. I'm just as much accountable in the blame as the blame that I'm trying to place. I'm just as accountable for the energy and receptiveness to the space. My lack of attentiveness to myself forced me to search for insertion or the inserting of certain elements in my life in order for me to live a certain way. And I got stuck in that loop of inserting. I got stuck in that life of penetrating to get to the next point. So now that I shifted into that space, my whole life, all of my realities are based on the being attentive, practical solutions, and the aspects and how to assert them, the methods and how to assert them. That's all my life is. That's what my mind is programmed to do. My mind has literally been reprogrammed to that's how I take anything into my mindset. I can allow it to sit in the heart space and allow that shit to pour out. Use the example. If you ever watched a Bobby Hemmett, remember Bobby Hemmett? That nigga would sweat profusely. I'm sitting here. I sweat in all of my lectures. I sweat in sessions. I'm sweating constantly. Every time that when I'm interacting with other energies. Because my body naturally assesses, is attentive, and releases in that moment. In that moment of that now. I'm not thinking about the future. I'm not thinking about the past. Unless it comes to the current view. So when my ego comes up and be like, yeah, my ego is only going to bring up unresolved until I resolve it. And when I start resolving those aspects, when you start resolving them, now your ego only can bring up now your ego goes back with resolutions. Your ego is constantly working in your past. Your higher self is always working for your greatest good in your future. And you're working in the present. Your ego is always working in the past. Either it's working for you or against you. You're always working in the present. Your higher self is always working for your greatest good in the future. So it will show you all of the realities based on the future that you're trying to get to. So that's why I say you don't have to look for the outcome. In the present state, you are the resource. Those emotions that you leave unchecked, those become the payment of your resource. The value of your resource, of what you are. The truest aptitude of self-love, self-worth, self-value, self-deification. Until it's time for you to level up and go again. Wanted to get that off. This is for me, it was a very needed, necessary point of a self-care Sunday to break a lot of this down. How we're speaking to ourselves, what your mouth keep doing, how you keep keeping yourself inside of certain spaces. I'm not going to do any reading. I'm not doing any readings. I just wanted to get this information out there. If you came in on the end, when the video uploads, you can go back to the beginning and watch it from there. Share. Go ahead and share it. I ain't said this in a minute. Share the video. Do it. Let the video do what it's supposed to do. It's going to trigger. It's going to piss people. It's going to do whatever it needs to do. I accept. I'm open to that. Yeah. Of course. Of course, in that same space, you can support the lesson. You can support the works. You can support the works. The Cash App link is above it. Hit that. Yeah, you can hit that support the link. You can support it. I appreciate the reviews. I appreciate the review. Like y'all getting in there and putting those reviews in. It's helping us change the narrative. You have to be in gratitude before you even step into the process. Or you'll be seeking gratitude. You have to be in gratitude before you step into the process. Or you'll be seeking the outcome to be gratitude. Stop capping yourself off. Stop trying to hold yourself back. Because it feels good in the moment. But then 3-4 years down the line, that shit ain't got no fucking it ain't got nothing. It's not even 3-4 years down the line. When you're looking at your Facebook memories and you said something 4 years ago and it lays flat there or makes you feel some type of way, it means you didn't, when you implemented that, you didn't start that. You didn't accept that you implemented that and lived through that. That's why it's a memory. That memory, the mental memory, your mind being stuck in that memory lock, that's what you keep speaking. Your energy stuck in that memory. You've created that memory for your mouth to move a certain time, your hands, your body to make certain gestures at certain times with certain impulses. Once you change those impulses and these neural pathways, when we're working on the neural pathways inside of your mind, inside of that session, you're changing the way that you direct yourself. It's time to submit to the process. But yeah, I'm sit here for a little bit and relax. Let the wind keep playing. Watch the birds go crazy. I desire you to be the fucking best. Remember the 3 things, the 3 keys of my entire platform. Healing is destructive. You are deserving, but you're not entitled. And this level of honesty is going to force you into that transparency, to sit in that vulnerability, to accept that it's time to put in that work. Papa Lucifer Samdi, Mr. Samdi, Papa Samdi, whatever you want to call me. That's what I am. I am all that I am, and I am everything that I'm not. I can't be anything else that I'm not. I love you. We love us. Ashe. Peace.